Yo, guys, Justin Jaynes with the 10-7 here, and I'm here to respond to Luke Thomas's video talking particularly about Ian Garry and about how fighters are just not finishing fights as much as they used to, man. And I do agree, man. A lot of these fighters, especially at the high level, you're getting up there, and particularly talking about Ian Garry, in his last two fights or three fights now. He went to decision three times in a row. He had MVP, won by decision, lost decision to Shavkat, and then wins a decision against Carlos Prates as of recent. But I think we should back off that a little bit because Ian Garry is fighting the best fighters in the world. When you look at Shavkat, Ian Garry goes in to fight Shavkat, 18-0, 18 finishes, has a knockdown, drag him out fight. Ends up losing a decision. But I mean, cut the guy a break, man. He's fighting a guy that's 18-0 with 18 finishes, man. And I don't know. And then you go against Carlos Prates, 4-0 with four performance bonuses, four finishes, goes in there and does what he has to do to get the victory. And I think that's more important to fighters now than getting that big knockout or that big submission is getting the victory. Guys, I fought in the UFC. I know the things that are said and done behind closed doors. If you do not win, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how exciting you can be. You will lose your job. So I think a lot of fighters do train a little differently now instead of being so aggressive. And Ian Garry, man, he's fighting the best fighters in the world. Shavkat, 18-0, MVP before that. MVP, incredible striker. MVP doesn't have a ground game. So how can we criticize Ian Garry for not getting the finish? And I'm sure you guys can say, oh, well, he could have tried to finish him on the ground. I mean, guys, they're fighting in the UFC. These are the best fighters in the whole world. Like, there's no position that Ian Garry can put, MVP or Shavkat or Carlos Prates in a grappling exchange that he hasn't been in 1,000 times. It's very hard to finish guys, especially Ian Garry's traditional striker, transitioning to MMA, transitioning to grappling, transitioning to wrestling, and he looks great. Yes, Luke Thomas did say, and I'm a big Luke Thomas fan, 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. He has a great take. He's always very humble, and he's never arrogant in his videos, and I really appreciate that, especially because he's never fought before. And I do agree that some fighters are taking necessarily, and some people say the easier route, which it isn't an easier route, but it's the safer route because they have to ensure victory because their job is on the line. And Ian Garry is one of the best fighters in the world, and he's fighting the best fighters in the world. He's either up for a title shot in his next fight or the fight after that if he wins. So personally, about Ian Garry, I don't think we should talk about him not finishing fights very often because, again, he's going to be fighting the best guys in the world. Now, the UFC as a totality, man, I do wish guys would get a little bit more aggressive. I do wish guys would go out there on their shit a little more. But unfortunately, the way the UFC pay is structured, the way the UFC contracts are structured, if you lose fights, you don't lose fights, you lose half of your paycheck. And if you lose enough fights, you lose your job like I did. So, me going in there and I wanted to knock out every time. I would walk forward, walk guys down. And, that's what I wanted to do. I thought if I put a show on for the UFC, they continue to bring me back, and they did until I just couldn't put together wins long enough to stay around, and Ian Garry fortunately has been able to, but these other guys, look like Marab, and that's why it took him so long to get a title shot because he's a decision machine. It's kind of funny that the UFC wants finishes, but they're going to fire guys that are trying to finish that are losing fights. It's I don't know, man. There's just like this it's like a Goldilocks theory. Like they too much, not too much, not too less, just right. I don't know, man. It's such a weird thing, man. Like I said, UFC wants guys to get knocked out, but the guys that are going to go forward and put themselves in those positions to get knocked out, putting themselves at risk to get knocked out. And if they lose, like I said, they lose half their paycheck and their job if they lose too many times in a row. So I can understand from both sides. It is a balancing act. You got to get guys like Justin Gaethje. But again, Justin Gaethje's in there winning. If Justin Gaethje loses 5 fights in a row, unfortunately, the UFC is probably going to let him go, especially if he gets knocked out 5 times in a row by going out there and throwing those big shots. Guys, I don't know. Tell me what you think. Luke Thomas, legend. He's saying that MMA is going down the wrong way. And keep in mind, guys, everybody in the sport of MMA is getting so freaking good at all weight classes. You know, this new evolution in the last couple of years of switching stance, orthodox, southpaw, orthodox, southpaw. You got to be able to fight an orthodox stance. You got to be able to fight a southpaw stance. You got to be able to defend wrestling. You got to be able to do takedowns. You got to be a black belt in BJJ. There are so many there's so many credentials now to get to the UFC, and you have to be so freaking tough and so good and so hard to finish. So that's another reason there's not as many fights. It's just fighters are getting better. Guys, I'm Justin Jaynes. This is my take. I agree with Luke Thomas. There are a lack of fights, but I think it's because the skill gap is narrowing and fighters are just so close. I mean, everyone is just so good. Tell me what you think in the comments.